Right now, we welcome a new guest to the podcast. You know him from his work with Black Sabbath, Slipknot, High on Fire, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Slayer, Audio Slave, Lizzie Borden, and many, many more. Mr. Greg Fidelman, how are you, sir?
I'm very good. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks so much for doing this. So tell me when you first got to work with Metallica and how that whole thing happened.
That whole thing sort of comes out of when I was working with Rick Rubin, doing a bunch of records with him for a long time, and he started working with the guys, and I sort of got the I drew the short straw. I got the Metallica gig, and so that's how I got in the in the very beginning, yeah.
And that
Which
was
is oddly a very long time ago now, but
I
yeah,
know, right? That was Death Magnetic, right?
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever told you this story, but I went to a premiere of the Through the Never movie that Metallica did,
Right,
and I was just blown away by how the sound was. Like they sounded incredible. I was like, "What?
right.
This is incredible!" So the first person I saw after was James, and I go, Whoever did the engineering and mixing of this should be your next producer forever because it sounds amazing." And he laughed and
Awesome.
said,
Yeah.
"Yeah, that's probably going to be the case." And to further fluff up your ego a little bit,
Right, right.
when I saw James in Phoenix on the last run when they were in Phoenix, I
Right, right.
asked him. I was just talking about the new record and how amazing it was. And I said, "It sounds incredible." And he's like, "Oh yeah, Greg's not going anywhere. We're giving him more work now, even." So,
Right.
so you,
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think these records, especially the last two, are probably the two of the best sounding Metallica records ever.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. That's a tall order there, but yeah, it's
They,
been great.
yeah, they are. They just, yeah, they sound so good. So kudos to you.
Thank
Uh,
you.
so we're talking about Spit Out the Bone today, and normally on this podcast we're kind of talking about the older stuff and things that influenced the bands and everything. But I wanted to do something newer because I felt I don't want to overlook new stuff because there's still a lot of new stuff coming out that's really good that I
Right.
think fits in with the songs that define heavy metal. And this one to me, it's probably in my top 15 Metallica songs of all time.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
when it came out, it was like the perfect song. Like everything, the riffs are great, the leads are great, vocals are awesome, the lyrics are really interesting, and it's kind of like I used to call it like the perfect song. And for these guys, what I think is really interesting is, here's a band that's one of the biggest bands in the world. And a lot of
Yeah.
times bands don't revisit kind of where they came from in musically.
Right.
A lot of bands move
Mhm.
on, but here's Metallica doing this, and this record in particular was, I mean, Death Magnetic led up to it, but this record in particular, in this song, is a very old school Metallica song and record.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And you mentioned something about the revisiting thing. It's like this song has when we were putting it together and recording it, and it changed. This song morphed from the beginning of the recording process till the end more than most of the other songs did. Um, but this song hits it, like pushes all the buttons, right? It does have a lot of parts, but when you listen to it, I remember we were trying to shorten some of the songs. We're like, maybe we should take this, let's trim the fat. And you get into this song, and it's like this is like the longest song, but it's like you could never, like, if you take this part out, someone's upset. So
Yep.
it's like none of it really felt like it. I don't want that to go away because the 15-year-old me, if that person knew that you took that out, I'd be fucking pissed, right?
Yeah.
So and it's got, it's the fast stuff. I mean, the middle section of that song in particular, it's still to this day. I remember even during the time when we were making it, it's like once it gets through like the verse chorus, it gets in the middle part. And the middle part has a lot of different sections, and it gets into the sort of melodic thing, and there's like a melodic vocal bridge, and then the guitar kind of picks it up, and it gets, then it goes fucking crazy, slow, dirty, da ga dun 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 ga dun. And that part still, I think, if I'm not expecting it, will give me goosebumps every time. It's like it's whatever that is. I don't know what it is, but I know it has existed for a long time. When I was, a 15-year-old kid listening to heavy metal records, I'm sure you can relate to this. It's like stuff would just like push a button that you didn't even know you had, and you wanted to just keep listening to it, and you wanted to keep finding more stuff that pushed that button. And they still, that song is chock full of that kind of stuff. I love it.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember
Yeah,
when I first heard the album, I was like, "Wow, this is really." I mean, I love the record from the first
yeah,
time I heard it, and it's such a great record. It's a little long. There's a
yeah,
couple things on side two that are what they are. But then
yep,
this
yep,
song comes in. It's like this great record, and all of a sudden the end, and it's very similar to the way Metallica ended records, in the '80s as well, with that kind of
yep,
fast
yeah,
banger song at the end. And then this song comes on. I'm like, "Whoa." What
yeah.
is what is this? I think I listened to it like 7 or 8 times in a row. I was like, "This is so incredible."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's something I know what you mean as far as like the classic Metallica records. Their last song always was sort of what most bands sort of do for the first song of the record. Like Metallica always sort of did for the last song.
Yeah,
Like a no apologies at the end, man. It always ended with just all you wanted to do is flip it and drop the needle again and listen to the whole thing over again. Right. It's pretty good. It's a good way of doing it.
exactly. And Metallica's always sounded so great live. I mean, partly I'm sure because the band sounds good for the first of all, and then of course Big Mick and they now their new sound guys. I mean, they still sound amazing.
Right.
But what you
Yeah.
were able to do, and I think this is really important because it's difficult for producers to do this, to make the band sound like they do live on a record. And that's an art, because I've heard so many bands. You see so many bands live, they go, "Oh, they're so great," but the record just isn't quite there. And you've been able to do
Yeah.
that on these last couple of records. Like, what's the trick to that, if there is one?
I mean, I don't know if there's a trick, but you definitely are tapping into something. I mean, if anybody knows what you're talking about, without getting too much into my background, it's me. It's like being a young musician and having what I thought was a killer band, and then getting the amazing opportunity to make a record, and then you make a record, and even you're just like, well, fuck, that doesn't sound the way it was supposed to sound like. But at that time, you don't, especially then, musicians especially had, the studio was like a fairy tale. Like you didn't even know how anything worked or how anything was done. Or right now, it's like every young musician knows how to make a record pretty much. But so it's always been in my DNA of like the stuff that gets me excited is always the stuff that captures that element. Again, it's one of those things like I don't know what it is exactly, but I recognize it when I hear it. And I also recognize it when it's not there. It just sounds flat, or you took it too far, or that's a common thing. And also it requires the artist to also sort of be on the same page. So I know lots of times, and this goes back even to days working with Rick and stuff, we used to always have a thing, it was like, go back, go listen to the tracking, rough mix of the tracking, like go, how did this first sound before we sat here and wrenched on it for 3 months? Like, why is this okay? Sonically, maybe it's not as good, or it's not as polished, and something's out of tune, or whatever it is. But like, what is this? Why is that? Why is the spirit not there anymore? And the guys in Metallica definitely uh hear that too. And Lars is, historically everyone knows, Lars is pretty, likes to have his finger in all the pies, and he also is very especially on these records. Obviously, I don't know what it was like to work with him, in the 80s and 90s, but it was always kind of like, yeah, that sounds right, and it sounds like it's been produced, but it's not as moving as it used to be, or whatever. And you sort of have to sometimes unravel stuff. And I always, my mantra is always, y- you work as hard as you can, and you chase every idea that you have, but you cannot be married to the process. You have to be able to listen
Yeah.
objectively afterwards, because when you work really hard on something, it's hard to be like, you know what? I championed that idea, and I went for it, and I worked a week on it, and I convinced everybody to do it, but you know what? It's not good.
Yeah.
And
Well,
unravel it,
yeah.
and you
Well, it's
have to be able to do that.
Yeah, and it's good that they've gotten to that point, because I was around a lot when they were making some of the not so great sounding records, and it's interesting that they've kind of come back around to that, to where, because I mean, it's just so weird that, again, one of the biggest bands in the world has had several albums that are really good that still have questionable parts of the production, but they
Right,
clearly have
right, yeah.
learned since then, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, and but it's good to hear that. I mean, they're all the thing that I still always love about all those guys is they're still first and foremost fans. and they
Yep.
still love the music. They still love the old music. Like when I get together with Lars, we ended up invariably talking about, new wave or British heavy metal or something, and we revert back
Yeah.
to being 16 and 18-year-old kids when we're,
Yeah.
in one of our bedrooms listening to all this stuff. So I think that remains a big part why too. They're still so hungry and still creating so much great art. And I remember that I was watching them on Howard Stern, and Howard goes like, "Look, you guys can tour for the rest of your lives. You all have tons of money. Like, you don't have to make new records or new music. Why do you do that?" And I think it was James that said, "Well, we're artists, and this
Yeah.
we make art, and that's what we do. So we're going to continue to make art. And thankfully, they're continuing to make art at a very high level."
Yeah. Right. No, that's a great way to look at it. And what James says there is totally true. It's like, I know sometimes I'll read about other like new bands that have been around for 30, 40 years. There's not many of them, obviously. And it's like, oh, what's the point of making a new record? And it's like, what's the point of making a new record? You're a recording artist. That's what
Yeah,
you it's in the description of what you do. I mean, you have to record music and release it. And if you don't have to sell 10 million records for it to still be a worthy adventure, it's like you have to be, if you don't have that creative side of you outputting stuff, I think you just, it's just not right. And they certainly are game for it. And, you mentioned again the 15, 16, 17-year-old kids that you sort of revert to. I These guys are totally that. It's almost funny at times. It's you could put on like, working on something and maybe it's not going great and the vibe's starting to tilt funny, and hey, put on something, put on British Steel, and like in 2 minutes, everyone's in a happy mood, and it's fuck. I remember this part. Oh my god, there's that one middle section is amazing, or whatever it is, Riot or whatever, some weird record from the old days, and we all, and I have the same thing, and I know you do too. It's like you could still tap into that like really youthful excitement. It's still fun, and you don't know what else to do but keep doing it.
100%. So you
Yeah,
mentioned you were a musician first in your band. By the way, a band that I
yeah.
loved and was amazing. Where was the transition to go from being a musician to being an engineer and ultimately producer?
Well, I sort of, I think the early days of my stuff, I always was like the guy in the band that would try to make a demo or record rehearsals or whatever. So that was always kind of my thing anyways. But the whole process of getting to make a record, and, we were lucky enough, we worked with Brendan O'Brien on this first record that we're talking about. And he was a bit of an eye opener for me as you don't know anything about anything, right? You don't even know what a producer really is when you're at that time, when you're even have a record deal. You're so, well, okay, what does a producer do? I don't even know. Um, and it was just an eye opener to see like somebody who like knew how to work all this crazy equipment and get stuff, recorded and play back and operate all this crazy machinery. And then he could pick up a guitar and say, hey, you're playing this part here. It's like, what if you played it like this? And he's a great guitar player. And it was kind of like bing, like, oh, okay. So you could be this, and it's not this or that. It could be this and that. And that sort of opened my eyes. And then it was, a frustrating handful of years there for us, trying to, navigate the record business. And the more we did, the more I asked questions, and the more I started learning. And after the second record that we did with Terry Manning, which is again a super generous guy with his knowledge, um, I sort of thought it'd be fun to try to do stuff like that. And then a couple of years later, when just things really weren't going for us and it was going well for us, it's sort of like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm like, I got to take a shot at this and try to figure out how to make it happen. And I just, pulled the plug on everything and got a job as a runner luckily at Sound City. So that was a nice spot to be at.
Yes.
Um, and I just kind of went from there, and I never really looked back, and I love it. It's great. And I still play guitar, and I still buy guitars for some crazy reason. Um, but yeah, it sort of was it felt like pretty much like a natural progression. It took a long time to learn the ropes, and working in the early days of Sound City. I started at Sound City, I think, in '95. Most of the things that came in and out of Sound City were rock, and all of it's all analog place for sure. That's all that was happening there. Digital recording obviously was happening then, and Pro Tools was sort of starting to be some part of people's record making, but not there. And then a friend of mine, there was also an engineer that sort of had a Pro Tools rig, and I kind of was watching what he was doing, and I was kind of like, this is, I didn't knew nothing about it, and I was like, this seems like pretty cool, and like this is not going anywhere. So I decided to learn how to do that, and then I sort of became the guy who knew how to do all the analog stuff and also could operate, a Pro Tools system or whatever, and it just kind of navigate, it kind of went from there. Sort of how I sort of latched, started getting a lot of jobs with Rick, because we started bringing Pro Tools rigs in for editing and stuff, and but yet I still could, track a band or whatever, so it sort of just kind of rolled out from there.
That's amazing. Did you do any schooling or go to school for any of this, or just learned on the job basically?
I was a school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
I just learned, it's I think I'm probably just naturally somewhat of a technical head, which helped. But you could teach yourself this stuff. Yeah,
Amazing. So
yeah,
am I correct in that you are now also Metallica records every show they do, and they offer it up
yeah.
for the fans to buy? Are you now? I understand you're now producing or mixing that stuff as well.
Yeah, I sort of I'm not mixing all of every show. I sort of have a team of specialists. It's really them. They're doing all the heavy lifting. But I sort of, we kind of came up with this idea, or Lars, I think, came up with this idea right after Hardwired. Is like, hey, do you think we could do this? We kind of step up the, make these things sound a little bit better and kind of up the quality of everything. And, he knew I had a couple of engineers that I worked with, and so we sort of came up with this idea. It took us a little while to figure out how to do it quick enough for it to make sense for everybody. And yeah, we've been kind of doing it ever since. I've got like, depends on who's available and who's not, but got like three people, myself and Sarah, my engineer, that's been with me since Death Magnetic.
Oh, nice.
So depending on when the show is and who's available, and send this guy that, and you do this stuff, I'll do that, and it works great. It's not are able to turn around pretty quick. And I think it sounds, it's a good, cool representation of the shows, and
Yeah.
yeah, it keeps
Yeah.
everyone busy. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you guys don't know, Metallica for years has been recording every show they ever have done, and now and afterwards they offer it up. They get it all mixed up and ready to go, like a professional recording, and they offer it to fans to buy it. So if you went to a show, you want to take it home with you instead of using your phone or something, you just get the whole audio thing. It's a pretty cool idea. And I started out as a bootlegger, so and infamously, Metallica would invite people, bootleggers, like, come record our shows. We don't care, and now they've bumped it all the way up to this, which I think is really great. And then I don't know of any other band that really does this. I mean, some bands like Pearl Jam and some of the guys put out a lot of live stuff, but Metallica, like, if any show you want, like, oh, I heard that show is good, you can go up on their website and buy it. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I remember the bootleg days, and I remember when this is a long time ago now, but when they started doing, like, yeah, just come, bring your cameras and bring your tape recorders, and it was like, usually it's like, if they catch you trying to get into a concert with that stuff, they take it away or throw you out, right? And these guys were like, no, we got a special area for you right over here. It was pretty rad. And it's sort of whatever that mentality is still there. They're happy to, yeah.
Well, I was a bootlegger as a teenager, so I always embraced that. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
but
pretty funny, yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it. It was awesome, and thanks again.
Oh, sure, man. It's always good to talk to you.
Yes, sir. And don't leave yet, because we have to upload it